Hello, my name is Andrew Bauer and I am the debate and forensics coach out at Halstead High School. This is an instructional video on the best ways to take a look at a debate round, and this is a video intended to help judges who are going to be helping us out with our home debate meet. First off, thank you so much for agreeing to judge for us at our home debate meet. Acquiring judges is usually the biggest challenge that any coach will have when they're putting on a tournament like this, and any volunteers that we can get from the community to step up and to help out some of our debaters from around the area, it's something that provides them with an opportunity that they don't get in any other activity. So huge thank you to those of you who are going to be coming out to help us. And just a reminder that we will be feeding you that day. We'll have hospitality set up, and we'll find some other ways to pay you back. But this is a video to help anyone out who is maybe a little bit nervous when it comes to judging, and it's meant to cover a few of the basics of debate and to help you just feel as prepared as possible when you go into a debate round. So a few quick things. I am making this video using my computer and screen capture, and so here's a few thoughts on the best way to use this video. First off, feel free to pause, to backtrack, or to skip ahead, however you want to utilize this tool. In fact, I always tell people that this is not mandatory that they even have to watch this video, because in essence there's really no wrong way to make a decision when it comes to debate. But I want you to feel as comfortable as possible going into that first debate round. And so if you need to move ahead, if you need to go back and review something, I highly encourage you to do so. So what is debate? Debate is an activity where one team simply says, let's do this really cool thing, this cool idea, and the other team says, let's not. We have debates all the time. You have a debate with your spouse whenever one of you says, let's go out for fast food, and the other says, no, we should not do that. All of a sudden you have two different sides who are going to be making arguments for one side or the other. And as the judge, you simply have to decide which team was the more persuasive one, or which team did the better job at using logic to try to construct their arguments and to try to communicate their message across. Keep in mind that this is a communication activity, and so the burden is on the debaters to make certain that the judges understand them, even when they're using some of these debate terms that you may not be that familiar with. It is their responsibility to make certain that they explain things well to you. So what are the teams going to be debating about? The affirmative team is going to try to prove that a resolution is true. Every single year, our resolutions will change in the debate community, and this year the resolution is the United States federal government should substantially curtail its domestic surveillance. And so teams are going to be arguing about how much the federal government should be allowed to spy on its own citizens, how much data they should be allowed to collect, and how aggressively should they be allowed to try to find out what potential terrorists are or threats are up to within our own country. And this changes every year, so they're going to be debating this one throughout the course of the season. So it's not like this is a new topic that they've only had a week to prepare for. They've had the entire season and a lot of the summer to try to prepare for this specific topic. And so they've been doing research over this specific area, so they should be prepared when they come into their first debate round on Saturday. So how exactly do they debate this topic? Well, the affirmative team creates a specific plan that proves that the resolution is true, and there are many ways that they could go about doing this. Every round is not going to be the same just because the resolution is the same. A team is going to try to be specific and use a specific plan to try to prove that what the resolution says is true. So an affirmative team might say that we should curtail our domestic surveillance by passing rules that regulate drones and drone aircrafts. Or they might say that we should curtail our domestic surveillance by repealing the Patriot Act. Any of those would be possibilities for what a team could do whenever they go into a debate round. So the affirmative team will have something very specific that they're going to propose, which will therefore prove that the overall resolution then is going to be true. There are an infinite number of cases and possibilities of what the affirmative team can bring in and try to argue. However, the negative team is not going to know what the affirmative team's plan is until they open their mouths and start debating. So the negative team is obviously going to be a little less prepared than what the affirmative team is going to be. So what are the parts of the affirmative team's plan? And this is where we're going to start to get into some jargon and to some debate terminology. So if this is a part that you just want to pause and read through some of this, or if this is something that you're going to want to rewind back through and view again, that is more than fine. We highly encourage that. However, again, it's up to the debaters to explain all of this to their judges, especially if a judge tells them that this is something that they're unfamiliar with. So there are a few different parts to the affirmative team's plan, and it's structured problem, cause, solution. The harms is the problem, inherency is the cause of the problem, and the solvency is evidence that indicates how they're going to arrive at that solution. So the harms are simply the problems that exist right now that the affirmative team wants to try to solve. A harm might just be that the federal government has too much power, that they are arresting people who are innocent, that they are invading our privacy. Any of those could serve as harms, just problems that they want to try to solve. Inherency is something in the status quo that prevents the problem from being solved. Inherency might just be an attitude that most people in the United States have regarding surveillance, or it might be a specific law that exists right now, or it might just be some other structural issue standing in the way of us having more privacy than what we have right now. But they need to show that there is a problem that exists right now, and they need to show that there is something preventing that problem from being solved. Solvency is pretty self-explanatory. It's just evidence that shows how the affirmative team can solve the harms. This is evidence that shows how their plan is going to actually solve this specific problem. So it's not enough to just identify a problem and a cause. They have to show that they can actually provide a good solution to that problem as well. And then advantages are just some good things or benefits that will happen as a result of doing the plan. And usually that's something that may or may not be connected with surveillance, or it may or may not be connected with the specific with privacy, but it's going to be some benefits that come about from doing that plan. So what does the negative team do? The negative team tries to prove that the best solution is whatever we're doing right now in the status quo. So the negative team isn't just arguing against the affirmative team. They're also arguing in favor of the status quo, in favor of what we're doing right now. So both teams are actually fighting for something. The negative team just happens to be fighting for keeping things the way they are right now. And so the negative team will try to prove that we're already doing enough right now without the plan, that the affirmative plan maybe won't work, and that there are some disadvantages to doing the plan. And so that's basically where the two teams are going to be clashing with each other. One team says we should do this cool thing. The negative team says no, we should do just whatever it is we're doing right now. So here's an example, and this is something totally unrelated, but let's just say that the resolution this year happens to be that you should take your son or daughter out for ice cream. And so you start to construct an affirmative case for it. Your inherency evidence says that your child doesn't have a car to go and get any ice cream. That is the inherent barrier. They don't have a car. The harms are that your child is driving you crazy and you want to pacify him or her by giving them some delicious ice cream. The solvency is that mom and dad have plenty of money and transportation to get the ice cream. Ice cream is also the source of all happiness and joy. And then an advantage is that the child can finally set down their phone and socialize with their parents, promoting good social skills and preventing them from being a delinquent the rest of their lives because they don't talk at home. I don't know, whatever the advantage happens to be there. So this is what the affirmative case would look like if the resolution had been something similar to this. So let's take a look at ways that the negative team would go about trying to answer this specific case. So in the green over here, we have all of the evidence that we just talked about. However, in the red, we have some of the negative arguments that could come about in trying to answer all this stuff. So in inherency, they say, the negative team would come up and say that the affirmative team says we need a car to get ice cream. However, there's plenty of ice cream at home. That there is plenty of ice cream, and there are other ways to get that ice cream rather than having to travel and go out to the store to get it. Another harm, in answering their harms evidence, would be saying that my child may be a handful, but he or she isn't really all that bad. Plus, even if they were, insane asylums really are kind of nice nowadays. Solvency evidence, ice cream does not bring happiness and joy, but instead stickiness and regret. Plus, how do they know mom and dad even have enough money for ice cream? The affirmative team never said just how much ice cream they would buy. Are you talking just one cone, or are you talking a truckload? So you could argue, where's the brink there? An advantage, or arguing against the advantage, you could say, while they say ice cream promotes good social skills, my child is incredibly good at eating while texting, so they won't actually socialize at all. And then the negative team may even throw on a disadvantage, saying that ice cream actually promotes an unhealthy lifestyle, which culminates in heart disease and a shorter lifespan. And so all of these awful things could happen if we were to do the affirmative team's plan. So all of a sudden you have two different arguments that you as the judge would have to weigh against each other. And whenever the negative team or the affirmative team answers each other's arguments directly, that's what we call clash. Sometimes the biggest mistakes that debaters will make is that they will both come up with arguments, but none of the arguments really addresses what the other team said. And so there's no clash there. And the analogy you can use is that it's like two ships just passing by each other and not coming close to each other. We actually want them to clash with each other, to run into each other. So topicality is where things get a little bit more complicated because it's an argument that is brought up a lot and it's not always really explained very well by debaters. And so this is just intended to try to cover what exactly topicality is. So topicality is a negative argument that claims that the affirmative team's plan doesn't meet this year's resolution. The negative team will argue that it's unfair to expect them to debate a non-topical plan because they shouldn't be expected to prepare for it. The negative team already has to prepare for a host of different plans because they don't know what the affirmative team is going to run. Keep in mind, the affirmative team knows what plan they're going to be debating when they go into the debate round. The negative team doesn't. They have to go home after they debate, and they have to prepare for debating all of the potential cases that are out there. So if they were to debate against this cool case about drones and they didn't have any evidence on it, they would be expected to go home that day and try to prepare evidence for it so that next time they might stand a chance at winning it. And so it's very difficult for the negative team to be able to debate effectively throughout the year. And so topicality is meant to try to protect them. You can't just have a team come up and say that they want to curtail domestic surveillance by getting rid of cameras. Well, that's not really something that would be topical. You can't really just say we're going to get rid of all the cameras in the country. And besides, the federal government has to curtail its own domestic surveillance, not the domestic surveillance necessarily of all their citizens. So an example would be, would rules that prevent companies from spying on you really mean that the federal government was curtailing its own domestic surveillance? Should the negative team be expected to prepare for a case like that? And would it be fair for them to try to debate that? Something to keep in mind is that it's topical if you say it's topical. If you think that their plan meets this year's resolution, then it does. And that's really all it comes down to. It comes down to what they persuade you the topic should mean this year.